Okay, Chairman, we're live.
Thank you very much, Mark. Welcome everybody to this virtual meeting of the Executive Scrutiny Committee at London Borough of Hillingdon. This virtual meeting is also being broadcast simultaneously on the Council's YouTube channel, Hillingdon, London. The purpose of this committee is to scrutinise the decisions made by the Cabinet who've just finished their meeting earlier tonight. My name is Councillor Keith Burrows and I am the chairman of this meeting. And I just want to make it clear, after some comments in the press, that although I am part of the administration, I will chair this meeting fairly and with the powers laid down to us as a scrutiny committee. I value everybody's input from whatever political side you are from. So that is how we will chair this meeting and we will move this meeting forward. Just some online housekeeping before we start, and these are important points. They were mentioned earlier as well. Please ensure any mobile phones around you are on silent. Please keep your microphone muted when not speaking, and then unmute to speak. As chairman, I will call on those to speak during the meeting. In terms of technical meeting control, if any councillor leaves the virtual meeting partway through for a period of time, for example, a lost connection, I will continue the meeting unless we are not quorate, which for the purposes of this committee is 4 councillors. I will now go through an attendance roll call before we move on to the agenda. So please indicate you are present when I say your name. Councillor Wayne Bridges.
Good evening, Chairman. I am present.
Thank you. Councillor Philip Cawthorne.
Good evening, present.
Thank you. Councillor Nick Dennis.
Good evening, Chairman. I am present.
Thank you very much. Councillor Simon Arnold.
Good evening, Chairman. I too am present.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Curlin.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm present.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Money.
Good evening, present.
Thank you. Councillor Kerry Prince.
Good evening, present.
Thank you. Mr. Tony Little, our co-opted education member.
Good evening, Chairman, present.
Thank you. And Mark Braddock, obviously from Democratic Services.
Good evening, councillors.
Thank you, Mark. And thank you to all for just going through that roll call for the purposes of this meeting. We'll now move on to the agenda. Can I ask for any apologies for absence, please?
Chairman, all members are present.
Thank you very much. Can I also ask, are there any declarations of interest in matters before this meeting? I shall take it there are no interests if nothing is declared now. Thank you. Agenda item 3, to receive and agree to the minutes of the last meeting. I should take the minutes as agreed unless there are any comments to be made now. Thank you very, very much. We'll take those as agreed. I can confirm that the meeting will review the public reports and private reports as discussed and determined at Cabinet earlier this evening. Item 5 is to follow up on matters that were raised at the last meeting, which the committee sought clarification on. Aspects of certain reports which are included in the agenda. These are for noting or comment, not for further clarification. Are there any comments on this item, please? Because we can see here that the committee requested whether the council has information on the income maintained schools, may have loss from lettings, and also any expenditure that may not be refunded by central government. I think you can see the officer's comment then that this information is not currently specifically collected from schools, and such matters are currently being handled at individual school level. However, introducing school level reporting on this could be considered. I think we just need to note this at the moment, but at the end of the financial year, this will become a much better view for our finances, because obviously it'll be reported in the schools returns for their finances. It is a very difficult one because lettings within schools at the moment we know are not happening, and also we don't know the lettings that they would have. So are we happy with the follow-up matters that were requested for clarification at the last meeting?
Chairman, I raised the question. I'm happy that if the information isn't available, we shouldn't be chasing it in advance of the year-end data.
Thank you, Mr. Little. That's very helpful, because I think at year end, I think we will be able to look at it again, because obviously the schools will produce their accounts then. Okay, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 6. Before we go into this, because obviously it's consideration of executive decisions which have just been made in the call-in, I would just ask Mark to clarify the purpose of the committee and the call-in function first. Over to you, Mark, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Really, for the benefits of those watching and for new members of the committee, this is the section of the main section of the committee's agenda where the councillors here on the committee have the opportunity to exercise their statutory powers to review the decisions taken by the Cabinet earlier this evening. There are in essence 2 options open to the committee. The first is to review the decisions taken on each report and agree that no call-in be made. And the second is to invoke by majority vote the call-in procedure, which can either be agreed at this meeting tonight if committee members have concerns on a Cabinet decision, or a meeting next week based upon the provision of any extra information you might need to determine whether you still wish to proceed with the call-in procedure. So this is the committee's sort of statutory role in terms of the ability, should it wish, to call in key executive decisions. And as happens occasionally, members also, as part of this committee, may seek general clarification or information on matters within a particular report, and information can be requested by officers, but this will be agreed by the committee as a consensus. Thank you. Chairman, I think Councillor Cawthorne has also.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, I just saw Councillor Cawthorne has raised his hand. Councillor Cawthorne.
Yes, as one of the new members of the committee, if I can just clarify with you, Mark, through you, Chairman, that the call-in must relate to a procedural issue, a process issue, rather than anything else. Am I right in thinking that? Can you just confirm, please?
Yeah, councillors. I mean, if you look at your agenda packs, there's some details about what constitutes a call-in within that, but essentially it is a decision of the Cabinet that you would call in, not anything particularly within a report. It's the actual decision of the Cabinet. So you wouldn't call in decisions to note or things like that. It would be an actual decision made by the Cabinet that you would, if you wish, could call in.
Thank you.
And thank you for clarification, Mark, and also outlining the roles of this committee. So with that said, we will move to the first agenda item, which was agenda item 5, which proposed changes to the admission criteria for community schools. Do we have anyone that wishes to speak to this regarding the actual decisions made by Cabinet, or are there any justifiable clarification points that a committee member may wish to have? If there is, please raise your hand and I will look for the raised hand and come to you. Okay, taking no comments, no raised hands, I will take it that we are happy with the decisions made on agenda item 5 and there is no call-in of agenda item 5. We then move to agenda item 6, which is the Better Care Fund Section 75 agreement. This was a noting to agree to delegated authority to approve the agreement between the council. So this is a noting recommendation, really. And just going to Mark, because it is noting, Mark, is this one that we just note as a committee at this stage, as opposed to call it?
I think, Chairman, I mean, the report is actually delegating Cabinet's authority to the leader and the cabinet member at a later date to make the actual decision. So the decision isn't really being made in a cabinet here tonight, but obviously the committee could, if you like, call in that process to delegate, but that may be something that you might not be inclined to do.
Thank you very much for clarification, Mark. Hearing what Mark has just said about this report, does anybody have any comments for clarification point of view, or whether they want to make comments on a recommendation that's been made? Again, I will ask for a raised hand. If there is, I will come to you and take your point. No? Okay. Lack of raised hands or any comments. We take that recommendation is approved and no calling. Item 7, the council budget. There were 9 original recommendations followed by the addendum. Again, I would come to you. Are there any points you want clarification on, or do you feel there are points that require a call-in by this committee? Again, I will take raised hands. If there are, I will come to you. Mr. Little.
Thank you, Chairman. Two questions, or rather one question and more of a comment. On page 73 of the report, in paragraph 134, it talks about the difficulties the council has with its budget on the SEN spending, and it's a subject that I've been pursuing over a number of meetings. And it says here that there are difficulties in estimating what those costs will be pupil to pupil, because obviously these are people with special needs who get individual plans. I understand that. But there appears to be a consistent underestimate of the costs that are involved with this. And is it possible to know the basis on which the council does its estimates of costs for new pupils that it makes over the year?
Mark, I will come to you for clarification on that. Is that something that we does the committee feel a consensus that this is something we would want to ask of the relevant cabinet member so that we get a response at the next meeting? I can see quite a few nods there. Mark, over to you, please.
Yes, absolutely, Chairman. If the committee seems to formed a consensus that they'd like to ask for more information about how officers prepare the estimate for these particular cases and the cost for those, to build up that budget which Mr. Little has queried. So I can go away and report back to the next meeting.
Thank you. And I saw 2 hands go up. They have gone back down, but I saw Councillor Dennis and Councillor Prince. Do you still both wish to comment? No, they don't. Okay.
I had a further comment, Chair.
Okay.
In relation to paragraph 140,
yes,
that mainstream schools will receive £80 per pupil for catch-up funding. Given the scale of education loss that has occurred in the most recent lockdown, in addition to the loss of education in earlier lockdowns, it strikes me that this £80 per pupil will be far from adequate to do the work that is needed for catch-up. Is the council intending to make any representations to the department for this funding to be increased?
Thank you, Mr. Little. Again, I will come to committee. Is there a general consensus that we would like that clarified as well for our next committee meeting? There's quite a few nods going on there. Mark, again, can I come to you and ask that is also clarified for our next meeting, please?
Yes, Chairman. I can go away and see if the council has any plans to make representations to government on this. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Little, for that input. We now come to the two-part twos, where I do believe Mr. Little has to leave the meeting. Is that correct, Mark?
Yes, Chairman. So if you just bear with me.
And you have to cut the live link, obviously.
That's right. So, councillors, if you could just stay on mute. Mr. Little, feel free to leave.
Thank you for your input, Mr. Little. He's gone already.
No
thank you for your input, anyway.
Just bear with me, and I'll turn the live stream off. Thank you.
Thank you.